Okay, thank you everyone for joining us for the Baltimore City Youth Opportunities Landscape webinar. We are going to get started. And as people come in, please note that you'll be able to add questions in the Q&A. Again, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Ignite Change with the Baltimore City Youth Opportunities Landscape webinar. We are so thrilled to have you here as we provide an update on our latest findings from the 2023 Opportunities Landscape. This report represents the most comprehensive inventory of programming opportunities for young people in Baltimore, spanning from birth to career. The Baltimore City Youth Opportunities Landscape serves as a map highlighting the various opportunities available to our city's youth. It's not just a collection of data, it's a tool for understanding the landscape of youth services and identifying areas for improvement. This year, we were able to collect data from more than 18 public and private organizations, as well as directly from hundreds of programs. Why is the Baltimore City Youth Opportunities Landscape important? Well, because it allows us to understand the current state of youth opportunities in our city, identify where there are gaps in opportunities, and collectively work towards creating a more equitable environment for all young people. This information tells us how we are doing as a city in supporting our youth outside of the school day. So the Opportunities Landscape is an opportunity for us to understand what programs and opportunities are available for young people in Baltimore. This iteration of the Baltimore City Youth Opportunities Landscape report identified what programs were available from January 2022 to December of 2022. Prior to the Opportunities Landscape, as a city, there were several challenges to gathering this information. We lacked a comprehensive understanding of the number of opportunities that were available that young people could access. We did not have the ability to track youth opportunity information in ways that was comprehensive. That information was fragmented, and because of data silos, prevented us from really being able to have a system understanding of what was available. And then there was no clear mechanism to assess the extent to which existing programs were responsive to youth needs and interests. So what we did was in 2019, we gathered a whole bunch of different community members and stakeholders to talk about what does it look like for us to have a repository of information on what is available for young people? What questions do we have? And what questions do we have and what would we have liked to see from a product like this? So we released the first Opportunities Landscape in 2021. And since then, we've had significant milestones. Through successful advocacy efforts, we were able to prioritize and secured increased funding for older young people, specifically young people 14 to 24, which resulted in an 82% increase in opportunities for programs centering on youth aged 14 to 24. It was an equivalent of $1.2 million increase in investment. So because we knew that in our first landscape, we found that young people between the ages of 16 and 24 had four times, that elementary school students had 4 times more opportunities than young people who were 16 to 24, we were able to target advocacy and investment to decrease the number of opportunities or to increase the number of opportunities for young people in that age range. We were able to establish, talking to young people, what they felt were quality programs. And so what we were able to do is create themes to be able to evaluate the quality of summer enrichment programs in a community review process. We were able to also use the Opportunities Landscape to share this information at national conferences and shared with local partners, as well as we were able to talk to other organizations across the country that were interested in bringing a similar project to their own community. There is an appetite for people who are interested in knowing what is available to their youth and their clients in the community. I'd like to take the moment to express our gratitude to the entire Baltimore's Promise staff who worked tirelessly on this effort, led by our Director of Research, Dr. James Sadler. A special thank you to our host, youth grantmaker Tobias Nance, and our esteemed panelists, Holly Gonzalez, youth grantmaker Charity Kingyel, and our partner at the Baltimore City Youth Fund, Erica Miller. These panelists will share with you their insights into using data to drive decision-making and create meaningful change. As you listen to today's webinar, please feel free to drop any questions you have in the Q&A box. Additionally, we provided you a workbook to help you engage with the material more deeply. As a reminder, we are recording this webinar and will share the recording with all attendees and registrants. Now I'll hand it over to James, who will guide us through a demo of the opportunities map, present our findings, and discuss recommendations for action. Thank you again for joining us.
Hey, thanks so much, Bridget. Let me share my screen really quickly. All right, so thanks again, Bridget. I'm really excited to walk through some of the high-level findings of our Baltimore City Youth Opportunities Landscape 2023. Our full findings and reports can be found on our website here, bcyol2023.org, which I'll be scrolling through today. Another piece that's available on our website, as I scroll down here, is our interactive dashboard, where you can find detailed information on all of the programs in our landscape, as well as explore the data yourself. A tutorial for how to use this dashboard is also linked on the main site and is likely being dropped in the chat right now as well, which will take us to take you to our YouTube page where you can watch that at your leisure. So before I move on to the main findings, I wanted to quickly show some data around the differences between our 2021 and 2023 analyses. We were able to collect much more and much more complete data this time around due to a more robust data collection process and based on lessons that we learned from our first analysis. So we're excited to continue our landscaping in the future as our data will only get better from here. Now onto our findings. Our first findings are just the numbers as they are. So we identified 2,725 programs in just under 1,500 distinct locations. We identified 124,115 opportunities with an early childcare capacity of 19,445. And if you're wondering why the childcare capacity is set on its own, it's because our childcare data comes from our friends at the Maryland Family Network, and that includes the number of childcare slots available in the city, but not how many of those slots were actually filled, which is why it's separate. Our first category of finding comes from program information by age group. The most represented age group in our landscape is elementary, which we also found in our 2021 opportunities landscape. So specifically, 52% of the programs and 33% of the opportunities in our landscape were available to this age group. As Bridget mentioned earlier, a big finding in our 2021 analysis was a lack of opportunities for older youth aged 19 to 24. And we're happy to share that this age group had a large increase in opportunities, thanks to advocacy and our partners, and now up to 17,482 opportunities, which is nearly 8,000 more seats than what we saw in our last analysis. This does mean that the gap in opportunities between elementary and older youth is closing. So as Bridget mentioned, in our 2021 landscape, we found that there were 4 times the number of opportunities for elementary age students than for older youth. This gap is now closed down to 2.3 times the number of opportunities for elementary school age students than for older youth. I do encourage everyone to look through our older youth spotlight, which is linked here on our website, to learn more about what we found out in this age group, including the fact that now the vast majority of opportunities for older youth occur during the summer months, which now leaves a gap of needed programming during the rest of the year. The next category of finding is on primary focus area. In our data collection, nearly all programs were categorized by their program primary focus area based on the categories here on your screen. That includes academic enrichment, arts, athletics and recreation, childcare, college and career readiness, health and wellness, housing, mentoring, workforce youth employment, youth diversion, and finally, youth leadership and advocacy. Our analysis found that the top 3 primary focus areas in terms of number of programs are childcare programs, which made up 28% of all programs, academic enrichment, which made up of 20% of all programs, and workforce youth development programs, which made up 18% of all programs, and most of those were youth work sites from the Mayor's Office of Employment Development. In terms of number of opportunities, the top 3 primary focus areas were academic enrichment, which made up a majority of our programs, 54%, health and wellness, which made up 19% of all opportunities, and workforce youth employment, which made up 8% of all opportunities. Comparing this data to our last analysis in 2021, we found a massive increase in the programs that identified as health and wellness programs. So specifically, the 2023 opportunities landscape identified nearly 5 times the number of programs and over 8 times the number of opportunities with a health and wellness primary focus area. In focus groups that we conducted back in 2021, young people and their parents and caregivers revealed their interest in youth-centered programs with engaged professional staff who could provide safe mental health spaces. And our data does indicate that in the wake of the pandemic, program providers and funders have prioritized focusing on student well-being in response to this type of feedback and the detrimental effects of the pandemic on our young people. Our next category of findings has to do with geography and the 55 community statistical neighborhoods in Baltimore City. And we were particularly interested in understanding if there was a relationship and connection between neighborhood need and the number of programs or number of opportunities available to young people in those neighborhoods. So we identify neighborhood need using 2 different metrics. First, the percent of children living below the poverty line, which is a US Census statistic sourced by our friends at the Baltimore Neighborhood Indicators Alliance, or BINYA. And child poverty rates in the city have a huge range. They range from 0% in the Inner Harbor Federal Hill neighborhood to nearly 69% in Sandtown, Winchester, Harlem Park. The other metric that we used was the Community Conditions Index, or CCI, which was developed by our friends at Baltimore City Schools, which quantifies investment in Baltimore neighborhoods based on economic disparity, access to resources, and neighborhood stability and safety. And this index ranges from 6, indicating low investment, to 24, indicating high investment, with lower scores representing higher needs. As you see on our website, we have interactive maps that anyone can use to dive deeper into this data. But to make a long story short here, our analysis found that there was a significant relationship between a neighborhood need and the number of programs within a neighborhood. So for example, this chart here plots out all 55 neighborhoods and their childhood poverty rate and the number of programs available to them. And it's interactive. You can hover over any of these dots to find out what neighborhood they represent and the data associated with as well. As you can see here, overall, there is a significant positive relationship where the higher the child poverty rate, the higher the number of programs are, with exceptions, of course. But this was the same truth was seen looking at CCI, where the higher the need was, the more programs were available in that neighborhood. However, when looking at number of opportunities instead of number of programs, we did not find a strong positive relationship between neighborhood need and the number of opportunities. indicating that the number of programs in the neighborhood doesn't necessarily mean that more young people will be served. Now, before I move on, a clear limitation of this analysis is that it uses program location as a basis of need. But of course, we don't know where the program participants actually live. And we know that kids travel across the city to participate in programs. But regardless of this limitation, we do strongly believe that there's considerable work ahead to improve the number of programs and opportunities for young people in neighborhoods with the highest needs. So based on these findings and our work around Baltimore City, we highlighted 4 recommendations in our report. The first is to expand youth opportunities. We identified around 124,000 opportunities in this opportunities landscape, which is far less than the 171,000 young people that call Baltimore City home. And this gap is likely even higher when considering that many young people take advantage of multiple opportunities in the city. We're also still interested in closing programming gaps for older youth. As I mentioned, there are more opportunities than ever according to our analysis with this age group, but the vast majority are during the summer months, leaving a high need for programming during the rest of the year. Our second recommendation here is to fund year-round coordinated data collection. So every year, Baltimore's Promise and the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success team up to host a summer systems table with over a dozen public and nonprofit agencies that provide or support summertime opportunities for young people. And this is a great table. It's one of my favorite parts of my job in the city, where participants share data, we discuss gaps, we collaborate, and we really improve the efficiency and equity in programming during the summer. We believe that we need something like this table for year-round programming to better and more equitably serve Baltimore's young people year-round with coordinated strategies. Our third recommendation has to do with the last finding category that I mentioned earlier, and it's the expand citywide program access, where we believe that funders and program providers should focus on providing programs and especially number of opportunities for young people in high-need neighborhoods. Our fourth and final recommendation is to empower youth in decision-making. We firmly believe that young people in our city are best suited to make decisions about the programs that they themselves experience. And our own initiatives at Baltimore's Promise has taught us that, especially with our youth grant making initiative, that young people can do incredible things when empowered. And indeed, we have 2 amazing young people that were part of our first cohort on the call right now. In this first cohort of youth grant making, young people led all facets of a funding process, from the RFP to funding decisions to being program officers. And in this cohort, in the beginning, they were able to interact with our 2021 opportunities landscape and combine that data with their own lived experience to decide what young people need the most. Young people are incredibly gifted. They just need to be empowered more. So these are our 4 recommendations and our findings. Really excited for the next part of this webinar where we turn it over to the panel. So for that, I'm turning it over to my esteemed colleague and friend, Tobias Nance.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tobias Nance. I am a youth grant maker from Cohort 1. I'm also a soon-to-be graduate of the University of Maryland College Park. And James, oh, thank you. James, that was great information. Also, everyone, don't forget to drop questions into the Q&A. Before we begin our panel discussion, I'd like to take a moment to share why the opportunities landscape is deeply meaningful to me. As someone who was born and raised in Baltimore City and a graduate of Baltimore City Public Schools, Merville to be exact, I've seen firsthand what the transformative power of students having access to opportunities can do. That's kind of how I got to the University of Maryland, right? Also, what we will be exploring today isn't just about data points and looking at graphs. It's about shaping the future of our city, empowering our young people, and building a community where every individual has the chance to thrive. With that being said, let's dive into our panel discussion. Our panelists bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table, and I'm eager to hear their insights. And we'll kick things off with introductions. So just introduce yourself, everyone.
Well, good. I'll start. Good afternoon, everyone. And welcome. I am Erica Miller, the Director of Data Management for Baltimore Children and Youth Fund, where we partner with various community stakeholders and youth-serving organizations. We provide funding, capacity building, educational opportunities to ensure that they have the resources they need to be effective and impactful. We also strive to give a voice to the youth, and place control and power in their hands when it comes to agency and decisions around the programs and services they need to thrive. And I'm so excited to be a part of this panel and to provide our insight, my perspective as it pertains to the opportunities landscape and equitable data.
Right, Charity, me or you? Want me to go first? All right, cool. Hi, everybody. My name is Holly Gonzalez. I am the administrator for community schools at Baltimore City Public Schools. So we're a district of 75,000 students. We have 161 schools and programs. And I get the pleasure of working with community schools, which are a strategy to ensure that students are learning and succeeding. And we do that by building on the strengths of our neighborhoods, our communities, and our partners to eliminate barriers to student success. So we have community school coordinators that work in those community schools, and they're at 155 of our schools this year, which we're very excited about. And I am just so excited and very lucky to get to work with this amazing network of people and partners in Baltimore. And I'm also very excited to discuss the youth opportunities landscape today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Charity Kenyelle. I'm a sophomore social work student at Clark Atlanta University. I'm also a part of cohort 1 of the Youth Grant Making Initiative, and I'm just excited to be in community with you all today and share my insights however I can. And yeah, I'm excited.
Okay, so let's get into the questions. So for James, I know you just gave your big spiel, but what would you most want people to know about the opportunities landscape?
Thanks, Tobias. I think the first thing that comes to mind is that a lot of work was put into this landscape, and it wouldn't be possible without our partners. So a big thank you, as Bridget mentioned, to Baltimore's Promise staff and our communication support as well. Thank you to the data providers that help build this opportunities landscape, and also to the programs serving young people in the city, not only for providing data, but also providing life-changing experiences for Baltimore youth. And the chat was rolling earlier, but I saw the Elevates here, Roberta's House, St. Francis Neighborhood Center, Urban Alliance, Orchids, and I know I missed so many, so thank you, thank you, thank you. I think the other thing that I want people to know is that this isn't just a standalone website that's meant to collect dust on its own. We are interested in working with folks in many different ways. So if you're interested in getting involved, let us know. If you're a funder, where we are looking for funding for better and more robust data collection. Right now, this initiative has no direct funding. If you're any stakeholder, we're looking to convene and determine how the data can enact change. So as Bridget mentioned, our first analysis, we found that there was a gap for older youth programming. We got together with our partners. The Baltimore Children and Youth Fund stepped up and we increased programming for older youth. We're interested in help making the landscape more accessible for different stakeholders. And if you're a program provider, we want to make sure that your program is included in the dashboard and has the most up-to-date information. So a lot of different ways to get involved. Our email is bcyol@baltimorespromise.org, or you can contact me directly. I'm james@baltimorespromise.org. But really excited to make sure that this data is actionable.
Good stuff, good stuff. And to Holly and Erica, how have you or can you see your organization and others using the data and recommendations from the opportunity landscape? And you guys can go in that order. So Holly, then Erica. You might be on mute.
Sorry about that. I got it. All right, so I can definitely see our organization using this information. I think I shared with you guys on the practice panel that a couple of weeks ago, I spent some hours putting community resource documents into the folders of 54 community schools, because these community schools are in the process of completing an asset and needs assessment. And the youth opportunity landscape is one of the important resources we use, especially for our asset mapping, to make sure that people are identifying resources in their neighborhoods and communities. Another way we have started using it a little bit is we have a lot of new community school coordinators, and it's a really great way to get a quick snapshot of some of the programs and organizations that are near your school. And I would be remiss if I didn't say, you know, we have community schools across the nation as well as, you know, across the state, and not every area has something like this landscape to support the work.
That's great, Holly. For BCYF, I see this as an opportunity for us to integrate this data with our current data collection and analysis efforts. We'll be using this to help identify opportunities, to help our grantees with their programming, as well as leveraging this data, as a means to help drive some of our upcoming capacity building efforts. We also seek to see how we can use this data as an accountability baseline, leveraging it as a benchmark to ensuring that we are truly meeting the needs of our partners and the youth. And we will also take this data and assess it internally and perform a deep dive and possibly seek to, you know, have a similar roundtable discussion to see how we can leverage this to complement our strategic vision.
Okay, and just gonna hit you guys with a double whammy here, to Holly and Erica again. Why is it important for programs and communities to have access to this type of information? And you guys can go in that same order.
All right. I mean, so I think from the perspective of community schools, I think that it's important to have access to this information because it helps us do our job better. So nationally, there are a couple of key frameworks for community school implementation, and all of them include expanded learning opportunities. It is a core piece of the work we do. Community school coordinators spend time every year looking for youth program opportunities to connect students and families with. They spend time looking for more youth program partners, and having the opportunity landscape as a resource helps us do this part of our job better. Personally, I think that, you know, we've all heard the saying, information is power. And I think what's powerful about the landscape is through this information, you're giving more families more choices. So I think that that's why it's important. And whether it's a community school coordinator, a family going directly to the landscape, or somebody else kind of connecting them with it, I want people to have as much information about the choices as possible so they can find the opportunities that are right for themselves. Does that make sense?
I'm going to speak from a more broader position. For those who know me personally, I'm a big advocate of equitable data collection. And there are, you know, 4 things that I believe when it comes to data. And when we're thinking about equitable data, sharing of data is equitable. So it first and foremost, it's the right thing to do, right? People have the right to know what data is collected, how it's collected, who it's being shared with, how is it being analyzed, and most often the data producers do not become the data consumers. So therefore, they're not completing that ecosystem. And so making sure that this data and this information is available to both programs and communities, you know, first and foremost, we have to remember that with data, you can't change what you can't see. You can't measure what you don't capture. Transparency is key to building trust. I often say the data does not lie. Even when you feed it lies, it's going to tell you the truth about the lies that you gave it. And you can't have long-lasting change without accountability. And so making sure that this data this opportunities landscape and its analysis is available is the step forward to, one, ensuring change is happening, holding those that participated in the data collection and analysis accountable. It's a way of us being visible to the community and its proper representation. We are ensuring that data that is often weaponized is not being weaponized. So it's very important. This is a way of building trust and ensuring that that ecosystem is healthy.
Good, good. Hi, Charity. Had a question for you as well. So, how do we make the opportunities landscape more accessible and usable for youth and families?
Oh, okay. How can we make it more accessible? I definitely feel like we should have more community building spaces where we can just go over the tool. Like the videos and the resources are helpful, but it always helps when you have a community of people surrounding you in that same position so that you don't feel alone. So maybe having community building spaces where we not only demo the tool or learn how to use it, we can also converse about the findings. We have to have a conversation. The tool, it's part of the conversation, but to talk to the people who are captured in the data or to just build community, that's how we advance further. And that was the second part of that question. What was the second part of the question? Or did I answer it? Okay.
I mean, you pretty much answered it,
Okay.
but yeah, it was yeah, you pretty much
Okay.
answered it. And just to move on back to Holly and Erica in that order. How does your organization use the opportunities landscape use the opportunities landscape data and make it more accessible to youth, families, and other community stakeholders?
So I already talked a little bit for me about how we kind of use it with community school coordinators. One of the things we do to make it more accessible is kind of, like I said, put straight hyperlinks in it, drive people to it, and we're hopefully going to be doing some technical assistance sessions with Baltimore's Promise with community school coordinators so they can become more familiar with it. But hearing Charity's great idea there about kind of like youth voice and youth determination, it really makes me think that, like, I'm wondering if some young people should be the ones helping coordinators like learn how to use that tool and do that filtering maybe, so that they can really be looking for like what's actually meeting the needs. So if you guys want to partner on that or anything, let me know, because I feel like I'm getting ideas from all of you and from Erica on this panel about ways we actually could be using it a lot better. So thank you.
Holly, anytime you want to connect, just ping me. I can talk about data all day. Okay.
Yes. Oh, you were all getting emails. Sorry, guys.
What at BCYF, what we're looking to do, we have several initiatives coming forward. We're looking to be not just data driven, but to use data as a means to be more data informed. And as I called out, as I mentioned earlier, we're all about equitable data collection, equitable data management, equitable data governance. And so for us, part of it is one, we can always share this opportunities landscape on our website as a resource. We're also looking to establish a data platform, a youth data platform, where we can take this data, as I mentioned earlier, a baseline, but take this data to complement the data that we're already collecting and compare it and hold ourselves accountable to see how BCYF is trending towards ensuring that we're able to meet the needs that were expressed and outlined in the landscape that was collected. As well as we're looking to share data as a part of sharing metrics via our social media, on our website, and as a part of our weekly and monthly communications.
Great things. So we're gonna kind of finish how we started. James, how would you like to see this project grow?
It's Tobias. How do I want to see this project grow? I think one of the first things is maybe more have the data more actionable by making it more real time. So for example, our 2021 opportunities landscape took programming data from September 2018 to September 2019, so we have pre-pandemic. What we share today for our 2023 opportunities landscape actually took programming data from January to December 2022, so fairly recent. But of course, things are continuously changing in the city. So the more real-time data that we get from programs, the more effective our analysis, our interpretation, and our recommendations and action can be. I think another way that this can be more that this project can grow is to think more about neighborhood level information and maybe better quantify and talk about what neighborhood need actually means. We had a couple metrics that I mentioned before, but what does neighborhood need look like in terms of transportation opportunities, program safety? I think working more on that with our partners is something that we're really interested in looking forward.
Okay. And also, we're wrapping up to the end of our panel. People, if you do have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. But just to everyone on the panel, I wanted to ask you guys, what is one thing you wish more folks understood about the opportunities landscape? And this question is posed to, any of you all.
I'll say how excellent of a resource it is, right? Most people don't understand, since data isn't tangible, they don't understand how powerful it is. And with this opportunities landscape, there's a lot of valuable information that can be leveraged as far as identifying partnership opportunities, new opportunities, and opportunity, the data can also be leveraged just, to drive conversation, identify what funding is. I mean, it is a wealth of information. It's a gold mine. And once you understand the power of data, I think this this research or analysis does a great job of displaying the power and opportunity that data collection can provide. So if people could just, respect it and use it as a resource, it's very, very powerful.
Hey, so one of the things, like thinking about this question, one of the things I want people to realize is a little bit kind of that it's there. And I didn't touch on it on my answers, but earlier, I think it was the 2021 data, James, we were actually building kind of at City Schools a map for some of our asset mapping for our community school coordinators. And we got like all of the like geographic data, all of the information from your opportunities landscape, like Baltimore's Promise was able to share. I think we could like download possibly even the shape files, but definitely the like kind of back end data. And that was really used for our organization. So not just that it's there, but kind of like if you want to use it, that you can actually kind of like for your tools. So I think that that's something that a lot of people might not realize and might not know. And the other thing is, I think that a lot of people do landscaping around youth programs. I think it's something that comes up a lot for a lot of us in our work because we do a lot of planning and things. And I want people to know that you don't have to start from zero, maybe, if like we can kind of look at a citywide resource that's already there, like it's something to build on. But those are just some of my initial thoughts.
I appreciate that, Holly. And oh, sorry, go ahead, Charity, you first.
Okay. I want people to know the resource is free. You don't have to pay for it. A lot of people have reached out like, how do I get access to it? It's on the website, it's free. Secondly, with that, the data, speaking to the 2021 iteration that we use as grant makers, it was very liberating to see how the data aligned with the issues that we were seeing in programming and the gaps in access to programming across the city. So it's really affirming to see the 2023 iteration highlight more of the issues that we know are true, but without that data, it can kind of be swept under the rug as if the issues don't exist, and they really do. So I think I want to implore people to definitely not be intimidated by it. It's a very thick tool, for lack of better words. Like it's very hefty. So don't be intimidated by the tool. Please allow it to liberate you and to help you in your work, because without the information, you won't get too far. With the information and with the communities and building community with the organizations, you can get so much farther. There's this proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And this tool really is an embodiment of that. And yeah.
Okay, sounds good. And Bridget? Oh,
I had a
okay.
follow-up to what both Holly and Charity said. And thank you. Charity, I'll let you go first, and I'll have to follow you up, and just poor decision making on my part, because that's very, very difficult. But yeah, just to reiterate that we do not intend whatsoever to gatekeep this data at all. That's not what we're about. We're about collaboration. We're about making data actionable, and the only way that that's possible is to share it as widely as possible. So I'm sure that we can get all the links back into the chat. www.bcyol2023.org is where all this information is, including the dashboard. But as Charity said, it's a lot, so we are more than happy to collaborate to help interpret some things. If folks want to see the data in a different way, if there are any ArcGIS folks in the chat and want to use the actual layers that develop the dashboard too, we're open to a lot, and we're really excited for folks to use this tool.
And just to pose another question to the panel, what is your advice for people that are just starting to look at this data?
To think about four things. One, advocacy. So who is represented and not represented in the data? Attribution, what is being captured, what is not being captured, and what context is it being reflected in, right? Accessibility, who needs access to the data, and then accountability. How can you hold us accountable? Because without those four things, equity is missing. And be very, very curious about what you see. Don't accept it for what it is. If something isn't right, reach out. I think James provided an email address earlier, because the data will only reveal what is given. And so just remember those four areas: advocacy, attribution, accessibility, and accountability.
Anyone else?
I mean, I guess for me, like, I keep in mind that I just think that keep it in mind and kind of take some time, especially if you're somebody who's going to use it, like if somebody else, if you're a community school coordinator, for example, and you're going to be using it to connect people to a resource, I would take some time to sit down and really kind of like try to answer a bunch of different questions you may have with it, like looking at filtering by different age group, by different interest area, and then seeing kind of like, and if you're going to use it, I do always recommend, and James had mentioned that this is collected from 2022. Most of those programs are still there, but you usually kind of like want to give a call, reach out maybe first, just to make sure that like there's space at the moment, that they're accepting kind of that they're accepting like more young people or students kind of for their programming. That's just kind of from that like use from that use perspective.
Sorry to interject. I've noticed that we see some raised hands. Could you please put all of your questions into the Q&A box? And panelists, we can continue if you still would like to answer that question that I posed.
My only advice is definitely take advantage of the tutorial video. It really helps, because if you just go in on your own, you're gonna feel intimidated. So definitely use the demo video that they provided on the website so that you can understand all of the functions of the tool, like the filters or like understanding the graphs and things like that. Because it's really, data is intimidating, but the best part is that you have the demo to help you. So.
Okay. Bridget?
Okay, it's time for us to go into Q&A from our participants. Our first question is to James. How did the Baltimore City Youth Opportunities Landscape differentiate college and career readiness programming and workforce development programming? What separates them?
That's a great question. And I think I'll start off by saying that in most cases, primary focus area was determined by the program themselves. In other cases, we as data collectors determined the primary focus area based on context that we had about the program. Of course, the difficult part of that is that there's so much overlap, and nearly all of the great things that are happening in the city can be put in many of those buckets. So I know, for example, in our summer funding collaborative, when we ask programs to put themselves in one bucket, it's a difficult process for them because they don't want to be there. There are so many things that aren't just arts programs. They're arts and they're academic, or athletic programs aren't just athletic programs. There's a lot of things that are going on there. So I did want to mention that. So a lot of it is self-identified, but I think the main difference between college and career readiness and workforce development is whether or not it's specifically focused on skills in the workforce or focused on skills that would lead to a career or to success in college, if that makes sense. There's still a lot of overlap there, but that's how I would answer that.
Thank you, James. A follow-up question is, how was opportunity defined in the Opportunities Youth Landscape?
That's another great question. This is defined in our introduction in the website, and I'll just read from it that youth opportunities are defined as programming for individuals age 0 to 24 in Baltimore City that is distinct from or designed to support or supplement in-school instruction. And for this, we were very much interested in programs that served Baltimore City young people. That does not mean that the program locations were necessarily in the Baltimore City boundaries. If you look at our dashboard, you'll find some points, some of them all across Maryland. But that's because, of course, we have many programs that serve Baltimore City students, but are camping programs that go out into the wilderness and things like that. We try to make sure that we are distinct from that point of the definition where these opportunities are distinct from or designed to support or supplement in-school instruction. So it's different than the great partners that work from city schools that go into schools during school time hours and provide some programming. It's different from that.
Thank you, James. And Frankie suggested a great question here. And this is one I will open up to the group. It's more of a thought question. So Frankie writes, I'm thinking about the older youth question. So one of the things that we identified is that there's a gap in opportunities for older young people. Does a job, just disappeared. Does a job not through YouthWorks count as a youth opportunity? There are a lot of reasons, of course, why someone would get a job rather than go through an after-school program once they're older. So the question is, YouthWorks does such a great job partnering with youth programs during the summer. So there is some remuneration involved, but are there other models for that? So the question is, does a job outside of YouthWorks count as a youth opportunity? I can actually get us started with that answer. So we did collect information from YouthWorks. However, we did not collect information from the private sector. So if a individual young person from 16 to 24 was working at like a Starbucks or a Walmart or somewhere else, then that information was not included in an opportunity for a young person. I do think it's something to raise and see if people have perspective on, what does that mean for the data that we collected? And as we move forward in trying to understand opportunity for this age group, what does that look like? Any initial thoughts?
that's a slippery slope, right? Because I'm going back through the chat and I see someone presented the question, how is an opportunity defined? But when you want to bleed that over into employment, now you're kind of muddying up the data. That does not mean that someone who is 18 or 19 can't participate in a program that helps them to develop the skills that can be leveraged to go into a career or to work. So I personally wouldn't consider employment to be an opportunity per se. That falls into the employability category. But if you have a program that guides in aligning youth with job opportunities, then that's a little different. That's my opinion.
I guess my kind of like perspective on this is, yeah, I think it takes a lot of discussion to like define the opportunity. I think it's important though in understanding what the actual gap is. To me, it kind of like when you say like we still need to get to 20,000 opportunities like 5 days a week, when actually if young people prefer kind of like, I need to understand their preference, right? If they're like, I would actually like to work 3 days and do program 2 days or something, I think it goes into how many, like what the actual gap in opportunity is and kind of how that intersects with employment is important. Sorry if there's some like noise coming through in the background right now.
But this is where you can get creative with programming, right? I have an 18-year-old son. And so, now that we're at 2024, everybody's not going to college. And so when it comes to programming, there's opportunities to, have programs where you're partnering with, other organizations, partnering with somebody. I'm big in tech, so I'm going to always promote technology. So partnering with somebody like Microsoft, partnering with Google and creating apprenticeship. AI is big, right? So opportunities or programming that's centered around equipping youth within this age group with the appropriate skills, right? And then them transitioning into positions and roles that will give them more agency and give them the ability to really support themselves, then okay, that to me, that's programming and opportunity, right? So there's an opportunity here to get creative, in my opinion, around what can be provided to youth in that age group, but also give them the opportunity to make money and have self-agency in that area.
Thanks so much. Our next question comes from Wesley. James, what do you think accounted for the changes in a number of programs opportunities for older youth? While the data may have played a role, it seems like there has to have been other factors at play with only a 1-year time difference.
That's a great question. I think first I'll say that there was like a 2.5, 3-year time difference between the two analyses. If you're looking at when the data was actually collected. I'll also admit that one of the reasons for the increase too is just our better and more robust data collection processes. The fact that we identified a lot more programs and opportunities this time around than last time. I think part of that is a growth in opportunities in general in the city, but also a part of it is our more effective methods of data collection and help from our partners. But I do think that the work from our Opportunities Landscape 2021 did make a difference, and we know it made a difference because, like we said, we use that data to advocate for more older youth programming, and brilliant friends at the Baltimore Children and Youth Fund who they joined the Summer Funding Collaborative. And they really try to prioritize their funding on youth programs that serve youth age 14 to 24 that are led by Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And we found, at least through our summer funding collaborative data, as Bridget mentioned at the top, that this increased, this led to an 82% increase in seats with that alone. And that increase has remained over the years as well. So I do think that that is part of it. I also think that post-pandemic, YouthWorks has started to get a little bit more seats as well. That tends to serve some of that older group as well. So yeah, I think between better data collection and between really concerted and intentional efforts from our partners to increase opportunities is why you might be seeing that those increases in older youth programming. It's a great question.
Thanks so much. Holly, question directly to you. How can a nonprofit easily connect with a local school? Is there a directory of community coordinators?
All right, so you can always, and I just got to notice that my internet connection is unstable. Sorry if I freeze. You can always reach out to that school, like just the phone number, and ask for the community school coordinator. If you've got a group of schools in an area and you want to know who to reach out to, you can reach out to me and I can give them their the contact information. As far as a public facing list, there is a lot of turnover and changes. So whenever we have shared or posted something, invariably it immediately is out of date. So it's usually always better to just kind of like email me and then I can connect you over email directly to them if you guys are looking for them. And so I'll put my name in here so they can, or my email in here and phone number so they can put it into the chat for you guys. Did that answer the question?
Yes, thank you, Holly. All right. We have a question for Charity and Tobias. As young adult philanthropists, how do you see yourselves using this data to advocate for more resources? What do you need from adult investors and partners to make this happen?
Well, well, I know for me, I've pointed to, so outside of this, I work for the Army Educational Outreach Program at the Army Research Laboratory in Adelphi. So I've actually used BCYOL when talking to my boss about like we should probably move gyms to Baltimore City, whether that be partnering with the university because of this. And I actually had showed her I moved the age slider up, and as the age slider went up, the opportunities went down. So I was just showing her like in Baltimore, where I'm from, there's not many opportunities for older youth. And I think that the Army Education Outreach Program could benefit being in, this city. And I know that we're trying to do something with Morgan State University if we haven't already, but also we're just trying to, get gyms in front of, BIPOC communities, because I know for me, we do our due diligence when trying to get diversity in a program. But like I recently spoke at East Cyber Mission, I was a keynote, and yeah, I enjoy seeing the kids, but we see a lot of kids that are only from one demographic, right? And then what was the other part of the question? I'm sorry, I tend to ramble. It says, what do you need from adult investors? Honestly, the only thing, like, if I'm being honest, I just need adult investors to just listen, not like listen to us completely, because like sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about, but just listen to some of the stuff we say makes sense, right? Take certain things into consideration. And I think that when you do listen to youth or take input from youth, don't just use them as oh, we have youth, and use them as a pedestal. Just use them as a platform, if that makes sense. Like actually listen to them. Don't just, use them in a sense just to gain more interest for whatever it is you're trying to do. Like actually like take the youth into consideration when you do certain things. I'm sorry if that doesn't make sense, but like I think y'all might see where I'm getting at. Charity, did you want to add?
Well, I feel like you said a lot of it, but to piggyback off of what the question about how do we see ourselves using the data to advocate for resources, we've used the tool, the 2021 iteration of the landscape we used as in the cohort one of grant making. I'm sorry, I have a cold, so my thoughts are everywhere. But we used the 2021 iteration to inform how we wanted to award our grants. We knew that we didn't want to just tokenize the tool, make it seem like, okay, we use this tool, we're woke, we know what we're doing. No, we actually use the quantitative data of the tool to inform how and where we wanted to allocate the funds. And then we also use the qualitative data in an internal aspect by just surveying the youth who are a part of the cohort so that we can understand, okay, not just looking at the data, but how are we reflected in the decisions we want to make. And so we had to really seek out specific organizations and founders because we understood historically a lot of organizations are underfunded. The same organizations usually do get the funding. And so we wanted to prioritize advocating for organizations who've been doing the work for years and just haven't gotten the funding because their programs are non-traditional or they're not understood. And so to bring that to what we need from adult investors and partners and just adult support period is we need adults to understand that we're closest to the issues, so we know what we need. We're the experts here. We are the future. So if you put us in a unique position to have an impact, we will do that and we'll show out, honestly. Like we had a value of funding organizations led by Black women. 6 of our 11 grantees were leaders who were Black women. They were in the work for years. So we prioritized them because we knew they were doing the work. They just never had the funding and they never had the opportunity to engage with whoever was funding them before. It's just an application, but it's different when you get to visit the site, when you get to experience the program. And so we just need the support. Like we just need y'all to trust us because we have to live here longer than the adults will, honestly. And we understand, like I can't emphasize it enough, we understand our experiences help us to inform our decisions. And the tool is definitely a powerful one because it really validated a lot of the emotions of the organizations. One organization applied for years and years and never got funded, like 10 years. And when they finally did get funded, it was like, wow, like the tool acknowledged them because they were doing the work, but they weren't being reflected in the funding. So long story short, just trust us, support us, nurture us. We need the support just as much as the next one. And just have a conversation. Like you can learn a lot just within the conversation and not just going off of your assumptions. We know. And if we don't, we want to know. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Charity and Tobias. Every time you all speak, I just get chills. You all are just so, like you all represent, I think, young people and the experiences just marvelously. And we're all better because of the experience and skills and knowledge that you all share with us. So thank you. We have one final question before we close out. As a panel, how should policymakers in Annapolis use this tool as they move into session? I can get us started, or wait, Tobias, did you want to?
No, I wasn't gonna say anything.
Okay. Erica, also, so you come on.
I've been going first, so I'm gonna take a break. You go ahead.
All right. So one of the ways that I think about is really what has been reflected through this conversation is the use of the tool to make decisions around investment. And so I understand one, where there are opportunities in neighborhoods specifically that have high needs in order to think about where they can increase investments to improve like 2 different programs in Baltimore City. So I think that that's one of the ways, but also in thinking about policy and thinking about policy that influencing around like what types of programs and for who, like what age populations should we be looking at in order to think about improving outcomes for young people. So I think it's a tool to understand where there are needs to direct decision-making as well as for resource allocation.
I share the same sentiments, the same expression as Bridget. I can't stress it enough. Data tells the truth. So it should be a tool that is used in policy making, decision making. It should also be seen as a tool that can be leveraged to generate conversation as we have this data ecosystem that's imperative to how what change happens, what gets funded, what doesn't get funded, who's represented, who's not. And it could be the foundation for those in Annapolis who's trying to identify how do we engage the community when it comes to data collection, data analysis, and making sure that we provide services and programming that go into the hands or directly benefit those who will benefit from it, not those that are making the decisions and have no insight into what's going on.
Go ahead, Holly.
So, oh, go ahead. Okay. So I recognize that the question was about policy making in Annapolis, but I'm going to shift it a little bit to kind of like more specific policy making and say that kind of like there's a lot of opportunity for like whether it is like a student government association, like from a like it at the district level, or a school family community council, to really kind of like look at the youth opportunity landscape and use that information to think about how they want to advocate for their like school or neighborhood community, kind of like as part of their work or kind of like as part of like what they want to see for like for their neighborhood, for their school. And so I think that in that way, like it can be very useful. I think that, you know, and I appreciate for whichever type of kind of like policymaker is looking at it, the early childhood to kind of like 24 perspective, because I think it's nice to have both like early childhood and kind of post high school included like in one landscape. So I think that that can be very useful.
I think the only thing that I would add is that we've talked a lot today about what the landscape shows in terms of need and gaps in the city. And I think the landscape also shows how many assets are available in the city and how many great programs and great people are doing great work in the city, and how there's if there's a want to improve outcomes in Baltimore City, then there's definitely a need to partner with some of these 2,700 programs and folks that are doing great work in the city, and the young people that are in this call that are here doing great work as well.
Awesome. I just wanted to thank the panelists so much for the wealth of information that you all have shared with us today. As we conclude today's webinar, I want to express my sincere gratitude to each of you, the attendees, for joining us today. This webinar marks just the beginning of what promises to be an ongoing and impactful conversation. We have numerous ways for you to stay engaged with us, and we are committed to sharing this data in various formats and in forums. Today, the recording will be shared, not today, but today's recording will be shared with everyone that registered for this event. You will also note that there was a question around the slides that James shared. James actually did not share slides today. He was directly demoing from our website. So please feel free to access the report in the website linked in the chat. Following this session, you will also receive a survey. We would love to hear your thoughts about what went well, what you learned, and what else you would like to see from this work. Reflecting on our journey since the release of the Opportunities Landscape in 2021, we've witnessed remarkable change and collaboration. This has served as a catalyst for progress, igniting a spirit of collaboration and driving meaningful action. Moving forward, We are dedicated to amplifying this work and further strengthening our infrastructure using actionable data to accelerate positive change in our community. We are committed to ensuring that young people who are represented in this data are included in this process. I extend a heartfelt thanks to our Manager of Communication, Melanie DeStefano, and our consultants, Spitfire and Waldron, for their invaluable support in making today's webinar a success. Thank you once again for your participation, and I wish you all a wonderful day.